what every social network is doing is they are adding to your feed off screen. And as soon as that post or ad is added to your feed, that is an impression, regardless of whether or not it actually hits the screen. And if it was an ad, it went through an ad server, a request went out, it looked at your cookies, your history, and what campaigns fit you, and that ad was posted into your feed. And according to Facebook, it has to be seen a minimum of 0 pixels for a minimum of 0 seconds counts as an impression.
Welcome to the Carrie Barrett Show. Thank you so much for being here. Whether you are listening or watching, we appreciate your time and your viewership. Joining us today is someone that I like to describe as the digital marketing instructor to the stars. And you sort of are. And I say that like with a little bit of humor, Matt Bailey, but you really and truly are. So if you don't highlight it, I will. Take a second and introduce yourself to this amazing audience.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I've been in digital marketing for about 25 years, worked in mostly agencies, some brand, had my own agency for a number of years. Even when I had my own agency, we generated over $1 billion of value of revenue for our clients. And what I realized at that point is there could be more. But the problem was a lack of education within marketing departments, within managers, VPs. And so I pivoted my entire business to training. And since then, it has been a ride. I just can't believe some of the places I've been able to go to. But I have to pull the LeBron James line. I am just a kid from Canton, Ohio. I did not set out to do this. It's just been an amazing ride.
I love it. And so you didn't say any of the names. So I'm going to mention a few of them. When I say to the stars, I mean, this guy is teaching Google how to use Google Analytics. He's teaching Experian how to present data, Microsoft, Disney, Nationwide, Hewlett Packard, Hewlett Packard, Proctor Gamble. I'm getting all of these companies discombobulated. IBM, Duke University, you're right, the whole nine. I won't belabor the subject any longer because we could list your bio and be here 45 minutes later. Let's show some of it off. And one of the things that I would love to dive into with you, rather, is the issue of analytics. And when I say issue, you talk about this as well. It's a big skill gap, understanding how to read and use and perhaps some other things when it goes along with understanding analytics for your digital marketing initiatives and projects. So what's the issue there? Why is there such a huge lack of knowledge?
Great question. Thank you for starting with that. I would call it data illiteracy. This is what we suffer from. Number one reason is why it is overly complicated. Number two is it's not taught properly. And I'll caution that by saying I did a webinar recently. We had about 50 marketers from different companies, different backgrounds. And I asked them, tell me your background. Where did you come from? And the majority of them came from like journalism, marketing, some sort of copywriting. But I had others from biosciences. I had some from poetry, history. Probably 60% of them were from something else other than marketing or communications. And I don't think that's a problem. I love that marketing attracts so many different backgrounds and so many different people who can contribute and see things differently. The issue is even marketers are not taught analytics. I remember the analytics I took in university. It was the most boring, dry course.
It sounds fascinating.
Oh, it was terrible. And don't get me wrong, I hate math. I was at best a C student when it came to math. I hated it. I never saw the point of it. However, when I started my own company, web-based, and it was a B2B real estate business, I asked the question, where's the best use of my time to maximize my profit? I didn't realize I asked a really good question, and I didn't realize how good it was, because now what happened is I set the scope for what I wanted to learn. And now I had to go find the data that would give me that knowledge. And then what do I do with it? And so that was the beginning of my journey in learning analytics. It was a business question. And so it comes down to, number one, not knowing the questions to ask. Number two, there is a big problem of definitions. One of the first things I do in my training is I ask people, I give them an option, multiple choice. What is an impression?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, you're right.
People are saying, well, it's something that's seen 2 seconds or 3 seconds. And maybe a fourth of all attendees across all the sessions I've ever done, maybe a fourth or less, know that it's something where there is just an opportunity to be seen. It's not an actual see. And so, yeah, right from the beginning, we have a wrong vocabulary. And if you're in a meeting with decision makers, everyone's probably got their own definition of what an impression is. So that means we're spending money on something where we all don't understand what it is.
We think we're looking for different metrics or different. Wait, so let me ask you a quick question. An example of what the opportunity to be seen may look like in real life. Does that mean if I'm on, let's say my phone, for example, and I'm scrolling Instagram and somebody's post splashes across my screen before I continue to swipe, is that an impression?
No. So think of it when you hold your phone up, and think of it like a Post-it note. Like every post that's in your feed is like a Post-it note, and it goes down below your screen. And what every social network is doing is they are adding to your feed off screen. And as soon as that post or ad is added to your feed, that is an impression, regardless of whether or not it actually hits the screen. And if it was an ad, it went through an ad server, a request went out, it looked at your cookies, your history, and what campaigns fit you, and that ad was posted into your feed. And according to Facebook, it has to be seen a minimum of 0 pixels for a minimum of 0 seconds counts as an impression.
No wonder this is so easy to understand.
Right. So it's like a billboard driving by in your car. Billboards are sold on an impression basis, based on how many cars drive by. You don't know how many people there are, and you don't know if anyone's even seeing it. That's the same as an impression online.
Okay. 100%. All right. So the first problem that you saw with this knowledge gap or this lack of skill was the definitions or the lack of understanding, or at least having like a through line as to what a word meant. What's the next big challenge?
The next big challenge, I think, is just education itself. Mm-hmm. We have marketers coming out of universities that don't understand marketing analytics. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed. Like even when I hire people in, he meant this as a compliment, but one of my hires, he looked at me one day and he says, all you care about is making money. Yeah. We have an agency. In case you don't know, that's how your salary gets paid. That's how we afford the office. If we don't make our clients money, nothing happens. He goes, but they never taught me this. They taught me all the vanity metrics. They never connected anything to revenue. And then he says to talk about anything from revenue to profit, it didn't exist. And so I think our university education system is not keeping up with the technology, with the need of the industry. And so the problem is we have new hires, we have existing people. There's no knowledge coming in that allows you from day one to run with analytics.
So what's the answer? No.
Well, I'll tell you what's happening though with that. And this leads to the third problem, and I call it hamster wheel analytics. Because you get put into a role, the person that was before you got promoted or moved, you're now in role. And so you do what they did. You open up the same analytics program, you copy the same data, you paste it over here, and you send it on its way. And the next month, you open this data, you copy it, you paste it, and you send it on its way. And so you're not doing analysis. What you're doing is some control paste, control V, control C, and send it. Those are the only skills you're demonstrating. And so you get in this hamster wheel where you're just doing the same thing every month, reporting the same numbers. That's not analysis. Right.
So what is the solution to, it sounds like it's education, but what are the things that I guess we do need to be looking at? And I asked this question with zero knowledge almost of digital marketing, other than how I see it like play out in my world. But Interestingly enough, I was on a call the other day with somebody who works at AT&T, and he was talking about how AT&T had spent all this money to put this big, huge, like, almost like Times Square monitor in the middle of their downtown. And then they do, they sometimes will have events out there, and, we pitch reporters. And I'm like, well, does anybody ask, like, after we have an event, like, do we see, more hits on our website, or do we see, like, is there any measure of ROI? And he's like, absolutely not. Nobody even knows what they're looking for. And I'm like, okay, interesting. It sounds like we're on a similar path here. What should they be looking at? And how are they looking at things that are not vanity? We hear that a lot. We know it's not just about followers or whatever, but that are actually tied to things that do pay your employees salary and keep the lights on and all that other good stuff.
You nailed it. You nailed it. The number one place you can start is by asking questions. That's it. What's the intent of this? What's the purpose? If the purpose is just to raise awareness, and because I get that a lot, okay, then you're using vanity metrics. But be sure you're using the right vanity metrics. Make sure that you employ a measurement mechanism that is going to measure lift, recognition, those types of things. Impressions are a vanity metric that doesn't mean much in comparison. So based on the goal, you have to employ a specific measurement or model. So let's say our example is we want more leads. We want more business leads. Okay. That is my key business objective. Because when we get leads, that's what keeps the lights on. That's what pays employees. That's what keeps the business moving. Okay, that's my objective. How do I get more leads? Now I look at all my activities that generate leads. It could be content marketing. It could be, podcasting. What is it that's generate the leads? So now what I'm doing is drawing a direct line from my objective to what are the things that produce and measurable things that produce. So now I have goals. I have goals that if I get people to the website, I know that so many of them will fill out the form. I know that this research report generates this many leads. So those are my tangible goals that I can see, I can measure, and they have a direct influence. Now, the next level are your KPIs. Your KPIs are, I got this many people to the website. Fantastic. But there's no direct link from people visiting your website to filling out a form to becoming a lead. I remember back in the day, I would have companies say, we want to increase visitors. Like, fantastic. I can do that with a flip of a switch. What do you really want? You want leads, sales, those types of things. Because I could triple your visitors doesn't mean you're going to get more leads.
They have to do something then once they're there.
Right. That's a KPI. It's a key performance indicator. All that means it's a dashboard light. And the dashboard light comes on when something's not right, but it may not be related to your end goal. So it's strategically thinking, what's my objective? What are the goals that meet that objective? What are the KPIs that support the goals, but don't necessarily have a direct impact?
I have a million questions for you. So are the principles that apply for, let's say, a corporation, are the principles the same for a small business owner? Are they the same for you and me, perhaps? In theory, obviously, there's not perhaps quite as much data, but are they the same for you and me as they are for a Google or an IBM?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the best place to start, and it works for everybody. The best place to start is actually so closely tied to user experience. So for example, if my goal is to get people to fill out leads, the first thing I need to do is measure what's going on that page. How many people are hitting it? How many people are completing it? That is a task. And so I need to analyze that and find out what's my completion rate. And then now I'm asking questions. Well, how many people started the form and how many people finished? If I find out that I've got a gap between the amount of people that start the form and finish it, I've got a problem in my form. If I look at how many people hit the page and how many people convert, I got a problem on the page. If I'm generating a lot of click-throughs and nothing's happening here, the problem's a landing page. If I'm generating very few click-throughs, but I've got a good conversion rate, well, the problem's with the ad. So it's dividing up what's the task I want someone to accomplish and then set out the funnel. how do we measure this and identify, once you've got the measurement, what's the influencing factor? You can do it for a small campaign driving people to a landing page. You can do it for a big campaign that's driving sales.
How do you know what is, and I'm sure it probably depends upon industry and price point to some degree, et cetera. But if everything is functioning as it should and there aren't any of those big gaps, is there a good percentage? Somebody's landed on my website, and out of 100 people that land on the website, I want this many people to fill out the form to completion. Is there a sort of a one size fits all for that?
I want them all to fill it out.
Yeah, me too.
I want them all. And here's the thing. So people are happy with the 2%, but I have to tell them that means it's a 98% rejection rate. And so
that hurts.
it is, right? And it should. I've seen people like break out the champagne for 2%. Like, wait a minute. That means we're failing 98%. Why? What's missing? What's not there? And so our goal should be, what's the best conversion rate? Better than it was. That's the best conversion rate, because it means you're improving. And sometimes that landing page might have to go through 3 or 4 iterations before we're actually reaching the right people. And this is where usability and conversion optimization come in, is understanding. Here's a great example, Carrie. I hit a page the other day, I'm putting in my credit card information, and I immediately go down and to the right. Think about, your typical page. That's where the checkout button is. Not on this one. Checkout button was all the way to the left, and what was there on the right side? Cancel and start over. Immediately I'm like, you're losing sales. I can guarantee it. And if you switched the placement of those buttons, you would probably increase by 10%. It's just simple things like that.
Even if I'm hell-bent on buying something or, finding something, if I accidentally hit a button like that and it cycles me back to the beginning of the process, I get frustrated. Or maybe I'm like, oh, well, I don't have time to redo all of that now, but I'll come back to it. And I don't.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
And so we assume, I think also, that people are perhaps a little more persistent than they are.
And I think analytics is intimidating to a lot of people. But when you combine task completion with analytics, what it does is it gives you the opportunity to go to management or to go to decision makers and say, look, we're only generating 1.4% conversions off of this campaign. Here are 5 things we can do to improve our conversion rate. And if we do it, here's our intended economic impact. And now you can show numbers. And if we do this now, in the next 6 months, here's how much more incremental money we could be making. That will blow your manager's mind. Rather than just looking at the page saying, I think we should move the buttons. That doesn't excite anybody. But when you can bring some data, do some calculations, basic math, and say, if we make this change, like now, we're going to make so much money. If we don't make it, we're going to lose this much money. And now you've got the attention of everybody.
I want to sort of just backtrack for a second. This part is fascinating to me. When you are looking at those different stages of the funnel, whether they're on the website or they're on a landing page or they're looking at an ad, is it really just a matter of knowing what your goal is to hit? And then, okay, so this many people land on the website, and I'll use your number, 2% end up filling out the form. I can see that 95% of them started it. That is, you're looking at what you want those sort of starting and ending numbers to be, and then figuring out where in between the process breaks down or the experience break down. And you're right. It is sometimes like there's not a button where I need it to be. I mean, is that really what it comes down to in very simple terms?
Yeah, a lot of it is just figuring out what people need. Am I not addressing all the concerns? Is the button not visible? There's lots of things, but you only find the problem when you start that analysis. And then you use that analysis to kind of turn it back on itself. If we fix it, this is what could happen. Because many times, a lot of people, especially in marketing, they have access to the data, they see what's going on, but they do not have permission to touch anything on the website. So you've got to make a case for a change. And that's where a lot of that comes from.
Let me ask you a little bit about social media because despite the fact that I'm all over it, I still find it confusing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you mentioned impressions at the start of the show, and there's other unique views and viewers and watch time, and my YouTube channel has grown 1,500% in the last month, but there's still only this many subscribers. So is I have more view. Tell me a little bit about what some of those, how much time do you have?
We can go over some basic things about what they mean and what they do. Let's start with views, because views is really, really interesting. It's another term that is misunderstood. However, it's because views is defined differently by each network. So YouTube, it's a view if someone views for more than 30 seconds. Okay. So they don't even count it as a view unless it's 30 seconds. For shorts, it's different. Now, on Instagram and Facebook, it has to be a video view for more than 3 seconds. On TikTok, it is the millisecond that thing starts playing, that's a view. And I think Snapchat is like 1 second. So they all have different definitions of a view. So when you're looking at views, reporting views, you need to realize you're dealing in different currency based on what network you're using. So there's that. Impressions. Here's what impressions are good for. It tells you how well you're doing accommodating the algorithm. If your impressions are growing, that means your content, not even just your content, it means your pace of posting, the style of posting, as well as the engagement you're getting. If your impressions are increasing, it means that you're aligning with the algorithm of that platform. So that's all really impressions really kind of mean is, am I surfing the rhythm? Okay. If you're surfing with it, they're going up. Now, likes, I look at that as an attention getting metric. In my usability days, we would observe how people use social platforms. And it's funny, I just see people, they'll scroll, tap, scroll, tap, scroll, tap. They're just liking everything that catches their eye. I like likes because it's very similar to an email click, not an open. Opens are completely terrible. It's a terrible metric. It's like impressions. But when someone likes something, I know they've seen it. It's a validated view in my mind. It's a validated human view. And so now it's kind of a formula that I will look at how many posts I've made in the past month, and I'll look at how many likes have been generated. So add up all the likes. Let's say I made 40 posts and I got 10,000 likes on those 40 posts. Come up with an average. What's the average number of likes you get on a post? Now I've got something to compare to. I've got something to strive for. I got something to beat. And so next month, I'm going to try and beat that average. Well, how do I do that? I look at all my posts that have gotten, let's say the average is, I'm trying to, this is where my math skills just completely fall apart.
That's all right. Because as soon as you start talking math, I'm like,
yeah. So let's say my average is 50 likes on a post. I'm going to group all my posts by what got like 100. All right. Way over 50. Let's look at the things that really just went crazy. And yeah, what was the content? What was the time that I posted? What was the event? What was the subject? Now I start analyzing and trying to find common factors in those things that people liked. And then I can also look at the stuff that got near zero. What was it? Now, it's not going to work all the time. This is the most frustrating part because just depending upon the algorithm or anything, you may have posted the same thing and it got 2 different responses. But what it does is it gives you a sense of, okay, let's analyze what my audience liked. And we can do the same thing. I love comments. Comments is a measure of how good was your content? Are you speaking to the needs? So this is true interaction because people are actually typing true engagement. So again, what's your average number of comments per post in a month? Now you got something to beat. Now, what were people commenting on? What weren't they commenting on? So what you're doing is you're setting up something to actually compare to, and now you can do an analysis. If you don't have a comparison, you can't do analysis.
What sort of post was liked and what wasn't, and then looking at what were the differences between those two. content through to see what the difference is? Or is that I'm just literally looking at these two posts side by side, the more dynamic versus a still image, or like, how are you assessing that?
It's as all eyeballing it. We're just, so for one example, when we were looking at, I believe this was the likes, what we saw is, hey, let's move towards this because it fits your brand better. You're able to find something that's a little more specific than the stock photography. So we got them off of that and moved towards now custom graphics. So that's one thing we learned from the likes. And like I said, it's an attention metric. That like metric is based on the first few milliseconds of someone viewing because it makes them decide if they're going to stop or not. And so that's all of your picture, the headline on the picture, and the headline of the post. Those three things in a half a second need to be strong enough to make someone stop. So what content are you making? And again, the design is the picture. It's the headline that's making that happen.
Sort of stuff. Controversy. Yeah, because I know you like that.
Not controversy. There's a difference between controversial and contrarian.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that you suggest are contrarian to what we hear out there.
You just have to look at the world of ad fraud to know that either people don't know the first thing about analytics or they don't care. I mean, ad fraud is such a proliferate. I mean, right now, connected TV is selling billions of impressions. Some of the connected TV networks have zero viewership, but yet they're selling billions of impressions. How does that happen? It's a digital illiteracy. It's an analytics illiteracy that is paralyzing the online marketing and beyond online marketing, online publishing, everything.
I want to ask you one other question. And again, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I've been taking prolific notes since you've been talking, not as if I can't go back and watch and listen to this, but right at the top, you mentioned some of the challenges of having different definitions, even within one organization. And now you moved on to talking about different platforms having different metrics by which they, count a view or they, whatever, count not an impression, I guess. So one of the things that you mentioned that stood out to me was that TikTok will measure like that millisecond that it happens to play, even if you don't stop and watch. Whereas Instagram, I think you said, takes 3 seconds for it to count as a view. And everybody talks about how the organic reach on TikTok is huge, huge, huge. Is that because it maybe partly of the way that those things are counted? Is it you're comparing apples to oranges?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For TikTok, as soon as it hits your screen and starts playing, that's a view. Maybe even before it hits your screen, whereas on Instagram, it's got to take a few seconds. I use this word and I use it strategically, illiteracy. If you're not keeping up on how these networks operate, TikTok has admitted to artificially boosting views. And this is a phenomenon that we have seen when you sign up for a TikTok account. For the first couple of months, everything you post is going to be artificially boosted to give you serotonin in your brain that makes you keep doing it and keep going. Every network has admitted to artificially inflating metrics. Not only do they have their own definitions, but they are also boosting things to make things look better. And there is zero accountability for their numbers. There is no third party auditing them. You've been in television news. Nielsen was everything. It's a third party.
You live and die by it. And it measures by like every 5 minutes. You know exactly. If you come on the screen and the views go down, we know what the problem was.
Digital has none of that. Digital has no third party standardized measurement system that audits what they're saying. So part of the literacy of analytics is keeping up on how are these companies managing this? What are they doing in the algorithm? Not just trying to figure out the algorithm from a marketing standpoint, how do I do better, but what's going on behind the scenes? How are they doing this? Is this number even legit? No. So we're up against that kind of behavior as well.
And so I imagine that's why really targeting and going for one of the reasons anyway, they're not going for the vanities, the impressions or the views or whatever it is, but looking at who's liking or, who's commenting even, and among them are in that ideal space that you want them to be is really what you need to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what you're looking at. If your goal is to gain followers, these social metrics can wrap you up and spit you out. What's your goal? Is your goal to gain followers? Then yes, these social metrics are all about it. That's what you're doing. If your goal is to drive people to a destination to fill out a form to become a lead, if your goal is to get someone to come to your website and buy a product, that's the numbers you should be stressing over, because those are the ones that put money in your pocket.
Oh my gosh. Will you come back again?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
We need to dive into this a little bit more. And I wish we had more time now, but I want to ask you one question before we go. And I hope this isn't too broad, but you mentioned just a minute or so ago about understanding the algorithm. And that started me thinking about trends that are approaching or different ways that analytics will be measured and things we need to be aware of as we perhaps dive into this for our own businesses and companies. What do you see approaching, or trends that you see percolating that are things we need to sort of at least have in our peripheral?
Wow. I'll tell you, one thing I am absolutely happy about as a trend is that Google shut down their Google Analytics, and they forced everyone into the most unusable, unlikable, irritating product ever conceived. That, to me, I am celebrating, because what they're doing is showing that they don't care. It gave me an excuse. I mean, I used to love a Google Analytics. I would preach it. I did training for them on this. I have switched to a different analytics program because I think anyone who's using the new Google Analytics is going to be confused. They're going to be lost. And so I'm hoping it's forcing people to take this seriously and define, well, what is it that we need? Not this costs a lot of money, it's an industry leader. No, what do you need? What do you need to measure? And this is an issue. Businesses need to define their objective and how they meet their objective. When you can define your business objective and the process to get there, then you can find an analytics product that fits your needs.
Goes back to the foundations, the fundamentals, as they say. Matt, I would love to continue the conversation. I will have you back if you feel like being generous with your time. But for the time being, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about you or your company, or perhaps setting up some time to talk about working with you, where should they go? What should they look for? Where can they find you?
All right. My home base is sitelogic.com, SITELOGIC. Or if you want to bypass all of that and go right to the courses, I offer courses in analytics. Number one course is understanding and developing an analytics strategy. Number two is understanding analytics measurement methods. I provide frameworks. I provide systems to help you analyze data. Number three, you'll love this, Carrie, it's how to present data passionately and persuasively. And so I teach people how to visually present to non-data people and make your case for your recommendation and how you're going to improve the company. Learn.sitelogic.com. That's the learning site, but you can access it at sitelogic.com as well.
Very good. And we'll put all of that for you listeners in the show notes, and I will be heading there as well. Matt, it was amazing talking to you. I learned a ton, and I also realized how much I don't know, which I already knew was a lot.
Well, when it comes to analytics, this is the case. And part of it is I love teaching it, because when people get it, it changes their life. They get excited. There's a whole new view of everything. The sun's brighter, the grass is greener,
The birds are chirping more sweetly.
Yes.
My beer has a higher alcohol content.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let me put it into Matt Bailey terms. My coffee is more caffeinated.
There we go. Love that. Yes.
Matt, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. This has been a lot of fun.